Hi, John.
Hey Ned,
How are
how you
you
doing
today?
tonight?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Well, I don't think it's going to be a huge crowd, but we're going to have a few people popping on here shortly, and I'll do a short introduction, let you introduce yourself more fully then.
Okay, that sounds good.
Good day to be working inside.
Yeah, I saw the snowflakes coming down and I thought, maybe it's not quite spring yet.
It just kind of messes with us a little bit and teases. Hello, Phyllis. Hello, Cass.
Hello, John.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Oh, looks like just about the gang's all here. Uh, they're storming in. I have to keep reminding myself to look up there and make sure I'm admitting people when they get here. I had a meeting this morning and the guy emailed me afterwards. I couldn't get in. Yeah, well, that was my fault. Uh, I is there anybody else that we were expecting that we're missing, guys? I I don't think so. So
Maybe Kim Campbell.
that's right. Thanks, Cass. But anyway, we'll just launch right into this because I know everybody's busy. Ned, I want to introduce you to Cass Dumrose and Tara Roberts and Carolyn Todd and Phyllis Vetris. This is Ned Warnick. Just like me, he's a Moscow kid, been here all his life and been an architect for quite some time. Ned, we appreciate you taking some time to visit with us. And with that, I'll just let you further introduce yourself and then just share whatever you'd like with our group. And eventually, maybe we can go back and forth with some thoughts and questions and see where this takes us.
That's great. As John mentioned, I am a Moscow boy. I actually live in Pullman now. My family asks how I could defect to the other side of the state line, but our office is in Pullman, and I like a short commute. For those of you that know the Warnick family, I am the youngest and the dumbest of the crowd. So some of you know my brother Paul Warnick, who is the supervisor director of the Arboretum, or my parents, Cal and Kathleen. I am the youngest of that tribe, and I do my best to try to keep the family name from being besmirched, I guess. I did prepare a short PowerPoint, and I know that we all dread those almost as much as we dread Zoom, but I was hoping that through a quick little introduction of what myself and my company do, I might be able to prep you to have a conversation about your particular project. And so if it's, John, is it possible for you to allow me to share my screen?
If you can tell me how to do it, I see the share screen button.
So I think if you go up to my video screen where I'm showing, there's a set of 3 dots. And I think that might be the place where you can let me share it. If not, we can have a great conversation without this. This is not I don't like PowerPoint that much. So if this is an excuse for me not to force you to watch that, it'll be great.
So I have the schedule of options. What if I made you the host? Would that allow you to control it?
That
Cass
would,
is nodding. Again, I'm still learning my way around this, but hopefully that did the trick.
it looks like it did. And again, this is relatively short. I have a total of 15 slides, and the last 4 or 5 of them are actually about your project or your possibility. So very briefly, Design West is a regional firm. I'm one of the principals. We have offices in 5 locations across the Northwest and a total of 40 staff. We are licensed to do architecture in a lot of Western states. We do almost all of our work in Idaho and Washington. We have a small amount of work in Oregon and Nevada. And I guess I'll have my second project in Montana this spring. But mostly we do our work in the Washington, Idaho region. Our primary focuses are public architecture, so educational architecture and municipal architecture, and then also multifamily residential are kind of our bread and butter. I myself, as I alluded to, this is a resume that you really aren't expected to study up on. But I've been a licensed architect for 30 some odd years. I've worked in at Design West for 23 years. And like I said, my primary areas of focus are multifamily, from senior housing to college housing, and then also public architecture, being education and municipal. As a firm, some of the projects around here that you might recognize, this is the Regency in Pullman. So this is an assisted living facility and then associated cottage housing, which, if you're familiar with Good Samaritan in Moscow, it's a very similar setup where there's a main assisted living facility adjacent to live separate, live out, but still be able to enjoy the advantages of the main kind of lodge building in the cottages, similar to what the duplexes are with Good Sam. Speaking of Good Sam, they're a longtime client of ours. We did the Fairview Village Estates, which is out on the Robinson Park Road, off of that road. And then also we've done projects for them in Spokane Valley and also in Western Washington. Not only senior housing, but we also do a lot of just straight ahead apartments. So the apartments shown on the left are in the Tri-Cities, and then the other two photos here are Pullman apartments. And then from there, we do a lot of row houses. So more of a kind of a attached multifamily, but still have your own front door and your own piece of property. And so the project above are the Stonegate condos in Pullman, and then the Cedar Point row houses up in Northwest Pullman are illustrated here. Another project that you might be familiar with in the Moscow area, we did the living learning community. So the 6 buildings or 8, I guess it's 8 buildings on that quad. We were the designers on that project. And we do odd housing projects as well. The Greystone Church in Pullman was about to fall down, and a property developer bought it, and we managed to convert it into 42 bedrooms. I think it was around 15 to 18 units that we managed to get into that building. And some of those units really are pretty cool units with the stained glass and still the old woodwork and timbers from the original church. Currently, this is a project up on the intersection of Terraview and Fairway Drive in Pullman. And it's a mixed-use development that has commercial and residential apartments, along with apartment buildings, cottage row house type, and then luxury condos up on the hill looking back into campus. And so this is a project of approximately 1,100 to 1,200 bedrooms worth of housing, primarily targeted at student housing. It's practically on campus, and so this is more of our student housing type. And then just to give you a project that we're very proud of, that we've been involved in for a very long time, the Moscow 1912 Centers project that we have been the architect on that for almost as long as I've been working at Design West. So we've had projects in there for almost 20 years straight now. So this really shouldn't be a conversation about me. I'm really just trying to establish my expertise and let you know that I do know a little bit about what you may want to talk about. The illustration that we have up now is one that Mark Warman did for your group, and I am intrigued to learn more about it. I think it has some nice features that I'm trying to decipher just from what I can tell from those images. But I'd also like to take this opportunity to compliment the economic feasibility study that was done. That is an extensive and convincing piece of work. I have to admit that when John and I first connected, which was through a series of, John had contacted Hoffman Construction, and we've done a lot of work with Hoffman and Construction, and Hoffman Construction put me in touch with John, and that's how we started having these conversations. My immediate reaction when I heard that these lots might be, available was, oh, more student housing, good location, probably sell for a good amount of money. That's a safe thing, and that's probably what an appraiser would look at it as. What's the highest and best use? Let's just do student housing. Everybody else is doing it. That's something that we could make work. In my first conversation with John, what excited me was thinking about housing in a different way and serving a need that may not be out there right now. I wouldn't say I'm a big supporter, but I'm a supporter of the family promise and the Palouse. And so that sort of rehabilitative approach to homelessness and trying to do the right thing by people at a point in their lives where it can be some help and it's not just a stopgap measure. And so we talked about maybe there's some aspect of that. There's some aspect of a type of housing that's not available in Moscow right now. And then I read the economic analysis, and I was completely convinced. I was surprised. At my point in life, I'm just getting into that 55 plus age group. I guess I've been in there for a few years now, but I had not realized the lack of housing or the lack of housing opportunity targeted towards that in Moscow. And so where I've worked on both ends of the spectrum of doing student housing for the U of I and for Wazoo target audiences and the assisted living facilities, that kind of age group spectrum of still live in your own unit, maybe don't want to mow your own lawn, maybe want to have a garden, but don't want to have a whole lot worth of garden. That would really intrigue me. And the economic analysis really kind of made me think that is an intriguing opportunity. From there, I've walked the site and I took some pictures on a medium nice, pretending to be a spring day in Moscow. And I was really struck with how buildable the lot is. There is that drop off in the back. The drop off actually is a big positive in kind of keeping this lot separate from the apartments below. And then John has shared his vision of really trying to capitalize on the views, where there are Moscow Mountain views, and to the south, you actually, if you're up a little bit, you'd see out and you'd see Paradise Ridge out over the church steeple. And then to the other directions, kind of to the west and to the south, to the northwest, looking out over the top of those apartments, you really get a nice view of the Palouse, just beautiful fields rolling away into the distance. And so when I was in the back of my mind thinking of this, I thought there was a lot more topography to it. And I thought there'd be more slope, but really the only slope is off the back, where it really is a big benefit to have that and not really any sort of challenge to trying to build on it. I understand from the geotech report that we do have some areas of fill, but I have yet to meet a site on the Palouse that doesn't have something like that. And there wasn't really anything too alarming in taking a look at that information. And so taking a look at that, my first reactions are great site, incredible value in a highly valued location, and the easiest thing falling off a log would be sell it to a developer. There's got to be developers, and I know of some that are looking for development opportunities in Moscow. And at the very least, I could at least introduce the two parties to the sale and see if it went anywhere. The more intriguing idea to me is that idea of the church being able to steer what kind of development goes on that site, clear to the point to potentially owning the site in the long term and benefiting from the rental, or in some ways the sale of portions of the site, and be able to finance the church's efforts in other areas, whether it's just church operations or missions or things like that. And so John did, in our last conversation, we were talking about the ideas of partnerships. And he did ask me to scratch my head and think about some potential builders for a project of this site. And without a whole lot more than maybe 5 minutes of thought and scratching my head and looking at some projects we've done in the past, I came up with this list of 8 to 9 contractors without trying very hard. And I would say there's probably that many again that would, if I tried a little harder, we could probably find additional potential partners to do this project if that was something you were interested in doing. All of these contractors are more geared to they get involved as a collaborative partner, but they expect to get paid and then they leave the project. They aren't really interested in being a joint developer and having some ownership stake at the end of it. These are contractors that are more interested in building for a fee and then being done with it. Touch very briefly on the financial aspects to this. On a typical project, a multifamily project, which is usually the multifamily that's aimed at college housing, property represents, let's say, about 10% of the overall development cost on the project. And then the remaining 90% are things like design team fees and contractor costs and permit costs and things like that. With you owning the land free and clear, you're already a big step ahead of almost every developer that's trying to put together a multifamily housing deal. Most of them are going in with a bootstrap approach and cobbling together something. Just owning the land without any other contribution or partners, you're already capitalized better than many developers that we work as a design team. And so with that, I've reached the end of my my presentation. And so with that, I say thank you, and I'm available for questions and discussion, and really kind of would be interested to hear what the group has to say about where your mind is at in terms of how this might proceed.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, this is Cass. Thanks for that. It's really refreshing to hear that from someone who's sort of outside of our little bubble, because of the last couple of times where we've met with the congregation, we've sort of taken a beating on our process and potential. So it's really refreshing to hear that outside perspective and how well situated we are. I think the committee's always had that feeling, but it's really good to hear it from an outside entity. So thanks for that.
I guess I could update this group as well as Ned that per the charge given me at our last meeting, I did visit with Joe McGurkin. Ned, I can't remember if I mentioned it to you or not, but Ruby Stroshine's husband, Tom, very active member in the church. And so Ruby has offered to do a formal appraisal for the church. We're trying to, keep things totally on the up and up, and because the church could decide to sell, you alluded to that, or we could decide to develop it. Either way, we're going to want to know what the value of the property is. Well, Joe gave me information about what he thought was the best comparable property, and it's not too far from where Tara and Carolyn and I live. The property across the street from the Bear football field that got scraped clean, purchased. I haven't checked, but I think it's R3, R4. It's you can put some apartments there, just like the duplex just south of it. And that piece of property sold for $7.35 a square foot. Roughing that out, that would put, again, this is rough, but that would put the value of our lots over $900,000. And Joe didn't hesitate to say that he felt that property would sell very quickly at a very favorable price. And again, back to the real estate thing, location. It is just, I don't think there's another piece of land like it within, Moscow. So we'll have more information about that before too long, Ned. Um, and just remembering back, I want to say that whether it was Shelley Bennett or one of the other people, we've asked a lot of people to kind of help educate our group because we aren't real estate experts. And I want to say we were told that we could fit about 44 residential units on that property. I'm not 100% sure that's the number, but it's somewhere in that ballpark.
That's from my preliminary look at it, and I need to stress this is preliminary. That I think is about the upper limit of Moscow zoning that they'll allow you to do. And so I was coming up with about somewhere between 36, 40, 44. I think 44 might be stretching that we'd be needing to get some of the bonuses on the planned unit development, which are not hard to comply with. But I think 44 is probably going to be the upper limit to the number of dwelling units that we'll be able to get on that site.
One of the things that I'd love you to comment on a little bit more, and it's certainly what I believe. I don't think we want to put out a proposal for somebody to give us a bid. I think we want to be joined at the hips with a builder, with an architect, if this is what the congregation approves. How do you go about doing that? How do you incentivize a builder that, yeah, they need to make some money, but that they also have a desire to stay as close to budget as possible?
So you and I have spoken a little bit about this. So I'm not sure if I'm going to plow ground with this group, but to try to back up a little bit, there's kind of the conventional approach or the old-fashioned approach of you have a design team, they do a set of drawings, you send the project out to bid to 10 contractors. And the joke in the business is the contractor that forgot to put the most in his bid is the one who wins it because it's the low bid, and the guy that made the most mistakes gets it. And then you spend the entire construction project fighting with them while they're trying to cut corners, and you're trying to get the quality that you had signed up for. A more evolved approach, I guess, is something where it's where the contractor is brought in as a partner, and there's a collaborative approach where the owner or client, the design team, and the contractor are all working together essentially from the outset to achieve a project. And in terms of John's question related to incentive, one of the ways that we've seen that done is the contractor establishes early on. So there's a concept design. The contractor says it's going to cost $3 million to build this project. And the contractor, the architect, and the client all go together and they develop the financing package to make that come together between equity and bank financing. And then as the project progresses, the savings from that amount that the contractor established at an early design stage is shared. And so the contractor, rather than being in the mode of trying to push the project upward in cost, that for every dollar that they save from wherever that original guaranteed maximum price, we call it a GMP, every dollar that's saved from that is split, say 25 cents to the contractor and 75 cents to the client. And that incentivizes the contractor to be a part of the cost savings team as opposed to the cost spending team. And that's had relatively good track record over the years of getting contractors to do that. I think what's more important even than that is finding the right personality match, finding the right team chemistry. And so I had a slide there where there was 8 to 9 contractors. And I will tell you, I don't have a favorite, and we work with all of those and more. And I think one of the crucial steps in this, as you move forward, and I may not end up being your architect, but I think as a group, if you move forward into a development project, you need to make sure that your group has good chemistry and trusts the team members that you add to this. And I think Design West is a great choice, but there are other architects, and there are other architects in our region that do this type of project. And I will say, I would like the work. I would like to work with the person who develops that site, because I think it's a great site. So if it turned out to be Noel Bloom and he was putting up student housing, I would want to be his architect for that. But I would think what's truly exciting about this project is the client being the church, and what you might be able to accomplish for the good of the church and for the good of the community and for the good of your ministries through this project. I'm not a good pastor. I'm not a good churchgoer, but I am a good architect. And the idea of getting to do a project that does good for people really excites me. My most interesting project from 2020 was a homeless shelter in Spokane. It will not be featured in any television shows. It won't be featured in any magazines. It is not a work of art. It was down and dirty. And I learned so much about that situation, learned so much. And I'm not good I'm okay at donating, but I'm not great at donating. But I had a chance to use my skill for the greater good. And I see this project as being a manifestation of that, that you have ministries that you would like to be able to fund into the future. You would like to use this endowment of land and turn it into something that serves your church and also serves the population. And that excites me. I think that's a great opportunity for the church to do something different. I will tell you that development has risks, and there's not guaranteed returns, except at real estate closing when you sell the lots to some other guy who builds an apartment building that you don't like parking next to when you go to church on Sunday. And so to me, the excitement of this project is what you guys can do, the goals that you can establish. And so John has shared a few of his ideas, and I'm sure that I'm not even coming close to understanding all the things that your group may want to try to accomplish with this. But I think the development potential is exciting. And I think what is the most exciting about it is the church being the client.
One of the things that I remember in our conversations with Steve Peterson, Ned, was that he said what's going to attract 55 plus occupants to this is high quality amenities. You want to comment on that a little bit?
So I will, and I think I would love to have a broader conversation with Steve about this. And I think this may be why we may not reach 44 dwelling units, but people who have reached the age that I am at have more stuff than a college student. And so a little more elbow room, a nicer kitchen, nicer outdoor space, possibly some connection to where you have your own gardening space, but you don't have to take care of a whole lot. I think those are the things that attract people. And so possibly a row house model, or possibly some arrangement like a garden patio apartment sort of approach. Those are possibilities. I don't know until we get into developing this more, but what Steve Peterson wrote and explained in terms of amenities and the target audience also is what excites me. I can do student apartments in my sleep. I don't mean to make light of that, but we've done 5,000 bedrooms worth of them, and they really are a little bit like stacking building blocks. And so this idea of approaching the target audience that Steve Peterson has identified, that is of interest to me as well. It's an underserved population. It's a market that should have an income, or at least a funding situation where they can afford to do that. And for us to design a model of housing that is appropriate to that, and then also returns that investment that Steve Peterson is expecting, I think that's a winner to me. That's something I think that's interesting and possible. To be more specific, John, I think it will be disabled accessible, which in my world equates to roomier apartments. There's more space, there's more clearances, the bathroom's a little bigger, the kitchen's a little bigger, the space around doors is a little bigger. And also those things like natural light and storage, some of those things that you don't see in apartments, and you don't see in your typical assisted living, or even the Fairview Estates that I showed that Good Sam has out on the east side of town. Those are nice little apartments and they have nice community spaces. They're still pretty lean and mean apartments. They're pretty, there's not a lot of extra space in those. And so I think looking at something that's a little bit higher end than that would attract people. So thinking about like the Good Sam duplexes and the cottages and things like that, those sort of amenities are, I think, what Steve's looking at. And I enjoy the conversation with him to see what he might have to add to that.
Okay, I've monopolized most of the questions. And anybody else?
I have a question, Ned, which is a little different than what we're talking about. Have you ever worked with anyone who had the property and they leased the property for someone else to develop it?
No, I haven't. And the reason that that's not very common in residential development is that the person who's developing it, they get they're almost always financing with a bank. So they have very little of their own money in the deal. They're undercapitalized, and a bank won't loan when there's that kind of, where they're less likely to own, when there's the oddity of that there's a leaseor that's leasing the land and somebody else is trying to build it. And so the kind of financing market that's out there to be able to loan on construction projects really doesn't land on leased property very often. There's absolutely a legal and a business model that makes sense, that it is possible. It is possible. It just is not very likely. The kind of developer that would choose to lease your land and then pay you a land lease and then also run all the risks of building it and trying to get a return, they would be looking to get a very long lease. And the lease term they would be looking for is 30, 40 years. And they would want a lease that tied it up so that they had first right of refusal on purchasing the property at the end. There's a lot of twists to that I can't imagine right now. I have not seen that happen.
Okay, that was one of the options that the congregation was looking at. One other question, and that is, you have provided probably more enthusiasm than anyone I've known or seen. And I think our congregation could use a little boost in enthusiasm. And I think you could do it if you'd be willing, if we called the meeting for the congregation.
I would be happy to. I'm a little nervous about that because I am self-serving. I mean, the advantage of this turning into a project and me becoming your architect, that's how I make my living. And so I'm being paid to do this. I'm not being paid to do this right now, but I am sincere in that the excitement of this project to me is what the church can do with it and the opportunities that they can do with it. And being able to speak to your congregation and just maybe get a few people to see that as an opportunity and see that this is a chance for them to do something different than having a parking lot and a student housing apartment across the street. I'm happy to do that. I think that one of the big first steps, that's obviously a huge first step, is to get the congregation fully behind this, or 99% behind this. But one of the big steps right beyond that is really getting people to share their goals and their visions of what they would like to see this become. And try to get that developed into, so that there's a more common view. My view right now really has been shaped by, I think, 3 conversations with John and then this conversation here. But the steps for me to say, I would love to see the development have some aspect that facilitated family promise to the Palouse. There's some little small slice of the pie. I'd like to see some common spaces so that people who lived there had the advantage of a card room, a puzzle room, a common space that they could all share if they wanted to do larger family gatherings bigger than their apartment. Some of those amenities I think are great things to talk about. And then also those above market rate 55 plus units, that's my vision. That is my vision as an architect sitting in Pullman and having walked across your site as a kid when I was growing up in Moscow. I don't know what your congregation has in mind. And I think facilitating those conversations and trying to get them beyond just getting excited about it, but also really developing a common vision and goal, that's a big step. That's a big piece of work, but it's one I'm excited about. I do need to say, I am eventually I might be a paid consultant. And so I am a biased input. And I would be forthcoming about that, because I'm a terrible salesman when I'm not being forthcoming. So your congregation would hear that as a disclaimer early on.
Thank you.
This may be just a quick yes, no question, but have you had any experiences with nonprofit organizations and the question came up, are we jeopardizing our status as a nonprofit? That's one concern that some of our members have raised.
So I don't. I'm not qualified to provide that sort of legal and accounting advice, but my knowledge is that there is some way to do it. If it was necessary to create a church foundation, a separate legal entity that would funnel all of its proceeds and therefore protect the nonprofit, but there has to be a way that it's possible, but I'm not really qualified to talk about that. All the entities like that, Good Samaritan, that we've worked with, that has been developed so long before I was involved in it, that it's by rote for them. It's part of their makeup. And so it's possible that there would be a situation after you got qualified legal advice that there would need to be a separate legal entity created that was the operator of this, that then funneled all of its proceeds back to the church. But I don't know that. I don't know that answer.
Oh, that's great. Just, as they say, it doesn't hurt to ask, because you may have had a recent experience like that and could just, we're just sponges trying to soak up information and learn. So, well, does anyone else have any other questions for Ned?
I know that this depends on everything. And in my job, I could ask these sort of questions and I just say it depends on everything. So I know that it depends on everything, but you've looked at the Peterson report and you've walked the site and you've seen the number that Peterson kind of tossed out for what we're thinking about in terms of our high-end potential rent. Can you extrapolate that out to a potential overall within $1 million guesstimate of what it might cost to build something like that?
No,
I knew you wouldn't be able to, but I thought I'd ask anyway.
Let me back up. I have not digested Steve's numbers in enough detail to tell, and it would take a little bit of time on my part to try to get to what the development potential is. And there's a conceptual 44 units, Steve's predicted rents, the amortization, and look at that, and yeah, I can come up with maybe that's going to work. It's a lot more complicated than that. And so there is a time, and I probably can't do it for free, but early on in the process, I think that's something that is a completely reasonable question to ask. To get back to what I was just saying a second ago, I'm not sure. One of the things about this project is, unlike a student housing developer that is undercapitalized and wants to get the biggest return on the least investment that they possibly can, I think the church has the opportunity, because you own the land outright, you have some level of capital already in terms of that equity, that will allow you to potentially make decisions that don't equal money, that you could reflect your values and things that you want to support, and not have to try to maximize. And the example is, yes, we could squeeze 44 units on the site legally by zoning, but maybe we want to give up one of those units because we want to have a better community space. We want to develop a community of people that can share something. And so some of those decisions are going to impact that. I'm not ready to answer that, Kaz. I wish I could. I don't like me straddling the fence, but I can't at this point. It depends.
Yeah, and I only ask because it's a little bit of chicken and egg for us, because 6 months or 8 months down the road, we're going to go back to the congregation. We're going to say, here's 3 options. You can sell it. We had 3. Second one was leasing, but maybe that's not an option as much as we were thinking. And then this third one is, we're all in and we go for development. And I think what we're going to have to do is present a fairly cohesive plan of attack to the congregation, because it's not like you're working with a couple or partners or something. We've got 120 people in the mix, and they all have an opinion about every nuance that is conceivable upon the planet of what would go into this project. So trying to find that universal consensus that's a pipe dream. But what we're hoping to do is at least get it narrowed down to 2 or 3 fairly well fleshed out proposals. And of course, this one's the most complicated, and it'll probably take the most effort for us to sort of get our heads wrapped around.
So what I will volunteer for no other reason than you're good folk and I'm a Moscow boy, and maybe it would lead to a project or maybe it wouldn't. The one option of selling it is already underway. So with Ruby Stroshine doing an appraisal and with the research that John has done, you're getting a pretty good idea what your land value is, what your raw dirt is. I'm happy to take a closer look at Steve's information and do a little bit more looking at what I think what sort of building blocks I can stack on that site, and kind of give you, well, if you wanted to go into the development game, this might be the range of what you're talking about. I would be happy to contribute to the cause of giving you that level of advice and input. For us to get to the point, I'm not sure how much effort that Mark Warman put into it. It looks like they did do several different options, but I think that he may be more generous than I am, but at the very least, I can give you a preliminary answer to the question that you just asked, and you can put that into the hopper with your other options. The lease option that Phyllis asked about is intriguing to me because I think it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. So it's theoretically possible. I don't know of any developer that would bite on it. And I think what would be interesting is, I'm afraid you would offer it up for lease and the developers would come swooping in and you would eventually sell it to them. Like they would manage to leverage the initial offer of a lease into, come on, just give it to me for $1 million. It's way easier than us having to do the lease. Let's just go down to the title company and get it done. It's intriguing to me, but the only place I've ever seen it happen is on commercial projects. And the difference in commercial projects is the return on investment for developers who do commercial projects is much shorter. There's a much shorter time span that they recoup their investment. And so land leases make more sense on commercial projects than they do on multifamily residential. So it's possible, and I don't necessarily take my word as gospel. I've just never seen it around here.
Okay, thanks. In another 6 weeks, we'll all have most of us will have our second hit of vaccine. So, we can always ply you with some Coulter's Creek wine or something. John will treat, I'm sure.
I would enjoy it.
I'm volunteering him.
I look forward to being able to meet people in person and be able to have that conversation. So I can, in the meantime, I can do a little bit more research and I can help answer that question, what the kind of theoretical development potential is, and give you an idea what those dollar values might be. And so that's an important thing for people to at least relatively get their arms around. What kind of project are we really biting off? I'm happy to do a little bit more work on that.
Great, appreciate that. John, your lips are moving, but we're not hearing anything from you.
I got bounced out for about a minute when you started talking, Cass. I don't know what happened, but all of a sudden all my screens disappeared, and I guess when it brought me back on, it muted me. But yeah, one of the things that you said that was really important to me, Ned, is just you want to find the right partner. And you know, we can't speculate about what's going to happen, but to me, the things you bring to the table are the kind of partner we're looking for. Somebody with roots here, somebody with experience, this whole spectrum. And so that, you know, thank you. And Carolyn's got to go. So, but anyway, so on behalf of all of us, thank you. We're going to be getting back to you.
Okay.
I think we're going to want to continue this conversation. And so, and if it was possible to get the PowerPoint, that would be great too.
Okay, I'll send that to you and I'll take a look at Kaz's question, kind of trying to get a ballpark development cost so that you can plug that into your general options. And I am happy to meet with a larger group if that's helpful. I'm also very happy to share a glass of wine. It's got to be good wine because I'm kind of picky that way. Not really. But yeah, when we are able to get back together, I would enjoy the conversation, even if it doesn't lead to a project. The things that you people are contemplating, it's exciting. I think one of the things, just as a parting comment, I sense a little bit of hesitancy from all the negative things that have been thrown out there of this might happen or that might happen, or there's this scares me, those sort of things. To me, I look at, you own an acre plus of land that is amazing. Worst case scenario, you sell it for $1 million. That doesn't sound like a bad downside. Upside, you get to do something great for the community that will continue your ministry into the future for years to come. I don't see anything that's negative about this situation at all. And so the excitement of let's find out what happens to that property together it's a great thing. I even if I'm not involved, I look forward to hearing about it. So with that, I will say thank you for inviting me to this powwow.
Yeah, thanks, Ned. We appreciate your input.
Thanks so much, Ned. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good
Good
night.
night.